Welcome back to those returning. I admire your dedication to improving your OET Part C reading scores. Hopefully some more practice will help you, and I appreciate all the comments, so keep them coming with questions or things you'd like to see more of. If you're new here, welcome. My name is Rachel, and this is RS Language Solutions. You may find it helpful to go back to my previous video with the first 3 questions of this Reading Part C text. It is all part of the same playlist, so you can find that just above this video. Other than that, let's get started. So we're moving from questions 7, 8, and 9 on to questions 10. Slight correction, in my last video, I said there were 6 questions in total. There's actually 8. So in this video, we will finish off the ones we did not get to. So here is your next paragraph for question 10. Here we have in the question, the example of the truck driver is given to underline the idea that. So this is a new sort of question. We didn't see that in our first 3 ones. And I want you here to really pay attention to some of the verbs. So underline the idea. We're thinking, okay, it's trying to make the point, to emphasize, to show us those sort of details there. And you're specifically focusing on the example of the truck driver. So pause the video, give the text a read, choose which one you think best fits. When you're ready, unpause the video and I'll walk us through this. All right, assuming you have done all of those steps, we have 4 options here and different aspects we see talked about throughout. Now, I want to jump straight to option D. If you chose option D, be very careful. This is a classic distractor, we call it, kind of question. We see the word amphetamines, and it's literally, talked about in this case. Can one imagine a doctor prescribing amphetamines to a truck driver because he or she is too tired to continue driving? You might then conclude, okay, amphetamines are commonly overused throughout society. That sort of, we have that word, it could match. Be careful. That's often a way that these questions are made challenging. They try to distract you with words that aren't actually getting at why. Like, what is the point of this example given? So then let's go to A, B, and C. So first of all, let's check here. Performance-enhancing drugs have few adverse effects in A. So we actually see right off the start, performance-enhancing drugs are talked about. But look at this phrasing. There exists no scientific evidence that using performance-enhancing drugs or methods for doping purposes is healthy, particularly in the mid and long term. And then we also have this phrase, but this is certainly far from beneficial to health. So based on those statements, again, first, they're not actually related to the truck example here, but second, that's not what it's saying. They're actually saying there could be, that we don't know, there's not enough evidence for it. Certainly, it's not benefiting the health. So be careful of parts in the text that address it, but don't actually answer that question. Okay, and so we have eliminated down to options B and C. So we want to be very careful when we look at that example. What is it saying? So let's start right here to illustrate this point. Nice. Also kind of synonymous for underline or exemplify. In a case of injury or fever, it is clear what the general medical practice should be. So in this case, with this situation, why should it be any different in sport? In this situation, can one imagine a doctor prescribing amphetamines to a truck driver because he or she is too tired to continue driving? The use of even the most common drugs is associated with risks and potential side effects. Then we have to argue that medically supervised doping is safer because a doctor is in charge misses the point entirely. Every day in hospitals and clinics, patients experience the side effects of drugs despite strict monitoring by highly experienced doctors. So in that paragraph alone, in that little set, or I guess the four or 5 sentences there, we have enough to point out one of these over the other. So if you chose C, be careful. Experienced doctors sometimes make errors of judgment. We do see this language here where it's saying patients experience side effects despite strict monitoring by highly experienced doctors. What's the point being made? Well, these drugs have the side effects, regardless of the fact that there's experience and expertise of the people actually giving them. So again, is the truck example of this ridiculous situation where you wouldn't give a truck driver these amphetamines, is that represented and it's being shown to point to the fact that there's mistakes or errors of judgment? Well, no, the truck driver situation is contrasted with general medical practice, and they give the example of, in the case of injury or fever, it's quite clear what should be. So this is kind of a read the details and think about it. Again, back to the truck driver. What is the point of giving that contrast? Appropriate practice should be followed in every situation. That's clearly represented here by the fact that they're saying, we know in cases of fever and injury, what to do, but just like we're making this exception for high performance athletes, we wouldn't do that for truck drivers. So all of these different scenarios are basically saying it should be the same. Standard appropriate practice should be followed in that way. So let me know how you did on that question in the comments below. Any clarification needed? I'll answer it if you have it. All right, from there, next paragraph, we have for question 11, in the fourth paragraph, the writer suggests, we're back to this verb again, that medical science has advanced to the extent that. All right, some clues here. What you'll find as you're reading is there are different things that are pointing to the answer, but you want to be careful. Is it actually what has advanced to that extent? I'll leave it there. Read the text. When you're ready, unpause the video and I'll go into an explanation with more detail. All right, so hopefully now that you're finished reading, there's a lot of talk here about the therapy part, right? And what was previously done and what's now being done and what's allowed and all of that. So that's certainly something to be aware of. If you're seeing the same sort of language again and again in different like treatment, therapy, and whatnot, it probably will cause some confusion because of how similar some of this language is. So what do we have for A? Certain therapies are no longer banned in sports. Okay, so we have right off the start, we have the International Olympic Committee introduced the term therapeutic exemption and defines it as the use of a drug for the restoration of normal health. Okay, what is actually being said there? Just that there is now this term that, again, defines this group of drugs. We don't know previously if these ones were banned. We might assume that, but again, we want to be careful about assumptions from just general knowledge versus what the text is actually saying. And specifically, we're looking back to our question, what is he suggesting that medical science has advanced to the extent that? So be careful. Option A can look a little bit like possibly it might be saying aspects of that, but it's not actually also answering the question there of what is that suggestion. How about here? People can be more confident about their own health. All right, so again, reading through my examples here, seeing lots of talk about what was previously the focus and then the new focus, and extends the concept of wellness and helping individuals feel better than they have ever felt, and then asking this question. So in terms of confident about their own health, if that's what he was saying, I would expect there to be phrases like, people now have better information to make decisions, or people are now more informed of this. Like there would be more language to point to the impact that these things have on people, which we're really not seeing. We're just seeing a description of, again, what was previously focused on versus now. Okay, so let's then go on. Some pathological conditions have become normalized. Or D, traditional boundaries of therapy have been broadened. Okay, so I look at those two, and like many questions in section C, often it comes down to two that are very close and we have to read carefully. Okay, so there's some clues here. What do we have? Starting at the top there, one of the central problems in defining a therapeutic exemption lies in understanding the evolving power of medicine. Okay. Medicine historically, in the past, has focused on restoring normative health for those with pathological conditions. Now, sometimes I encourage individuals, when you're reading, to try to produce a mental image here of what's going on. So if I was to draw this mentally, I'd say, okay, history, so let's say we'll put the star for now. So in the past, this is what has been the focus on restoring normative health for those with pathological conditions. Let me change colors here. As medical science advances, so going forward in time, however, we notice a contrast here. The focus of treatment transcends the long-standing goal of normalizing pathological conditions and extends into the concept of wellness. So with time moving forward, okay, now we have a new focus that has shifted, okay, and helping individuals feel better than they have ever felt. So in my mind, first, I'm not only just seeing that contrast between the two, but I'm seeing how it has progressed over time. And look at the language of the question. Medical science has advanced to the extent that. Paying attention to that should help us conclude what our answer is here. And again, this final phrase, so from a medical therapeutic perspective, where does the restoration of normative function end and the beginning of performance enhancement start? Okay, look at the language here. End and start. What does my mind go to? Well, immediately I'm looking in here, boundaries, right? Limits. Where's the beginning? Where's the end? And whatnot. So that's a clue there, some language that reflects that. Also, look at this, have been broadened. What did they previously focus on? Well, they focused on just the restoring of normative health for pathological conditions. Now, it's even further than that. It's encompassing as well the concept of wellness and helping individuals feel better. In terms of whether that long-standing goal has been reached, isn't clear from what's written there. But what's really key here is you're focusing on the question and that action of moving it forward in time and what has been the result. And so hopefully you can see from that D encompasses that idea, extending or advancing, not just to include what was previously focused on, but even more so now. And this issue brought up, where is that beginning of performance enhancement start? Hopefully you can see that. And really the key here is to recognize that both C and D have aspects that are talked about, but only D is actually getting at, again, this question with what is the suggestion in terms of the progression or advancement. Hopefully that's not too repetitive, but I just wanted to drive that point home as well. For those who got D, well done. That's a challenging question for sure to break down. All right, onwards we go. Up next, we have number 12. Specific sports are referred to in the 5th paragraph to exemplify, okay, again, this idea, like with the truck driver question, what is it saying here? To exemplify the idea that. So pause the video. As you're reading, look for the specific sports examples because that's going to help us draw that conclusion. All right. Assuming you've done all those steps, let's take a look here. All right, so right off the start, we have golf, archery, or pistol shooting, where a steady hand is critical. Beta blockers provide a performance-enhancing function. Okay, so here's, again, another tip. I like to encourage people the visual or sort of the positive, negative, past or present. Sometimes organizing that mentally when you're reading can give you a clue as to what they're asking for in that answer. So in this case of these sports, beta blockers are helping in that case. Conversely, so look at the language of contrast. In an endurance sport like cycling or long distance riding, beta blockers adversely affect it. Okay, so we have negative results of those. An interesting question to consider is whether athletes with adult attention deficit hyperactivity disorder are better athletes when treated with stimulants. Okay, language. Some athletes perform better. Okay, so we have another plus. With their ADHD symptoms are not treated with medication. So this is hard. It's like, I guess, technically, this should be a negative if we think logically about that. So don't give them medication makes them better. And if we're doing the plus or negative with the medication, that's a little tricky to figure out, but hopefully you follow me on that. And then in contrast, a basketball player who has symptomatic ADHD may be more spontaneous or unpredictable for the opponent, while another player with ADHD may have difficulty disciplining him or herself to stay in position unless his or her ADHD symptoms are treated, so they would do better with the medication. Okay, it's a bit of a mind puzzle here, but the point is, look at our text, right? Plus, minus, depending on the sport. Hopefully, I don't even need to show you negative evidence. Your answer there, C, medication can both help and hinder sports performance. That's exactly what those examples are illustrating with our pictures there, our little graphics. Good. And so this is a classic example of a question in text C where you're looking at multiple examples, you're reading them, you're thinking of the language, like how is it presented? All, some, conversely, that sort of clues can help you. And then from the examples, you're deducing what is the conclusion here from what we're seeing. I don't even know if I need to go into the other one. So if you got this one wrong and you're struggling, let me know in the comments below. But I think, for the other ones, they're more like a lack of self-discipline may drive athletes to seek medication. Like that's specific to what they were talking about in basketball, not across all the sports, and that the different sports being contrasted there. A, there's really no mention about what they would like or not like. It's just about whether it's helpful or not. And then medication is routinely used to overcome fatigue. Well, from the looks of it, it depends on which sport we're talking about and the specific medication used. So keep that in mind, but hopefully you can see how that answer is evidenced in that text. All right, onwards we go. Number 13. So number 13 and 14 are both using this same paragraph. So you'll notice right away, Vanguard, we'll get to that in our next question. All right, but for this one, in the final paragraph, the writer expresses some unease about. Okay, this is a tough question. I'll tell you that right away. And why? Well, the question itself, like some unease, we don't have like is very concerned or is worried about at a high level. Like some unease tells us right away the language is probably not going to be very strong. There's a level of sort of inferencing or conclusions here. So often the wording of your question will tell you what level of analysis is going to be needed here. So pause the video, give it a read. Tricky, very tricky, and then we'll talk through each of those. And I just have my notes here, and I just want to review so I can point out all the things that are good to notice there. Yeah, good. Okay, so once you've made your selection, let's walk through this. Okay, so first off, like what we've seen, what makes this challenging is that different aspects of each of the options are talked about. So for example, right in here, he's talking about testosterone, right? So we see that word, testosterone supplements throughout, right? And it's really, we want to focus on the difference between our options. So if I'm looking at this, A, misconceptions regarding what testosterone is. So the actual definition of testosterone, he's expressing unease about that. So sometimes rephrasing the question to yourself of like, can I summarize what this question is getting at? Is he uneasy about this widespread marketing of the supplements? When I think marketing, should be thinking like, again, practices to sell it, money, all of those sort of topics. Is he uneasy about the fact that medical authorities are supporting the drug companies? Or is he uneasy about the questionable financial practices within the drug therapy industry? And I'll tell you right away. So B and D, right? You can expect there's overlap there. They're both about, advertising, money, finances. Like there's probably going to be some confusion in that because of the language of those options. So if we look right away, let's go right to A first. Misconceptions regarding what testosterone is. What we have here regarding the definition is, okay, so in an era when testosterone replacement drugs are being touted as an elixir of youth, distinguishing between traditional therapy and enhancement procedures is becoming increasingly difficult. Okay, again, what is the confusion there? It's between what's considered a therapy traditionally and what is an enhancement procedure. But actually, like, what testosterone isn't really in question from what I can see there. So looks like it's not that. All right, let's go to C. Support given to drug companies by medical authorities. So right at the bottom here, what do we have? Just before that, warnings against indiscriminate, that's a tricky word, indiscriminate testosterone supplementation from medical authorities cannot compete in the media marketplace with drug company advertising. So we have something in there. Anything else? Yeah, so I think that's pretty much catching our answer, like in terms of evidence. So warning against indiscriminate testosterone supplementation cannot compete. So it's not that the doctors are actually saying, yes, this is a good thing. They're warning, but again, the media marketplace is stronger. So based on that alone, the word support, right? They're not actually supporting it. They are speaking out against it, but it's not strong enough. Okay, so A and C are out, B and D. So this is tricky. Widespread marketing of testosterone supplements. Okay, where can we look in here? Well, look at, again, even in that same phrase, and let me change color on us here. So warnings against indiscriminate testosterone supplementation from medical authorities cannot compete in the media marketplace with drug company advertising. Okay, so we're getting at a little bit here of the language, which is interesting. So there seems to be this contrast between what the doctors are saying is good versus the media marketplace, what they're pushing for. And then if we look in that next sentence, doping doctors can be seen as the vanguard of an army of medical practitioners who are leaving the traditional practice of medicine for the cash-only business of male hormone replacement therapy. Okay, and if you look even a little bit earlier too, I'm just trying to point out all the areas we could find things to point to this. The involvement of physicians in the doping of athletes must be understood in the larger context of promotion of hormonal enhancements for entire populations of prospective quote-unquote patients and whatnot. Okay, so my question for you, from what he's saying here, are you getting the sense he's concerned about the actual how the financial aspect is being done? Or is it more about what we're seeing here with the advertising and promotion? And I'm looking here and I'm seeing, okay, he's talking about this issue of promotion to these potential or prospective patients. We're seeing here again this contrast between medical authorities and media and that competition with company advertising. From what I'm seeing written, right, that evidence is pointing much stronger to B. There's an issue with the actual information being spread, it being promoted, it being pushed. We don't have anything in here about things being illegal, so there being actual exploitation or there being unethical things. From what he's saying, it's actually the widespreadness of this information. So that's a very tricky one because we don't have one sentence that's pointing one over the other. We sort of have little snippets or clues pointing to his opinion. It's more of an issue here of it becoming more widespread and popular. It's not so much an issue that there's unethical things happening or even illegal practices. But very tricky. I would say that's one of the harder ones in our text there. So let me know down below, did you get that? Anything else I missed that you see could also provide support? That's always helpful to hear. All right, lastly, let's look at this word vanguard. So I talked about this in my previous video, but lexical reference questions, they can look like the words this or that, but they can also be a vocabulary word or an expression. Now, what's tricky here is if you know what the word means, it's going to help you a lot. But you should, if you don't know what the word means, as sometimes these expressions, they do try to choose ones where you have to infer based on the context. So if you don't know what it means, the first thing I want you to do is look at your options. Which ones are a what and which ones are a why, okay? When we read our text, we want to replace it with what it's asking. So if it's asking us for a why, that's great. If it's asking for a what, then that's great. Okay, so hopefully you've read that phrase there. Doping doctors can be seen as the vanguard of an army. So we have a phrase here of medical practitioners who are leaving the traditional practice and so and so. So they are a why of an army or are they a what of an army? Well, grammatically speaking, we're looking for a what. We're not looking for a cause or reason. We're actually looking for like a something of the army. So if I look at my options, if I ask you a marketing incentive, is that a what or is that a why? Well, it's usually a marketing initiative, like it's a reason or a motivation. So that falls more under a why category. So I'm looking there thinking, okay, that's not really getting at the grammar that I'm looking for. An economic incentive, a what or a why? Well, incentive, kind of cause, motivation, or reason behind. Again, not really what I'm looking for. Versus a likely future development, okay? An unexpected consequence. These are more of a result, and this is kind of confusing here, but like the result, what happens, or a what, sort of, we can exchange some of those. So this doesn't always work, but sometimes you can think in those terms of, is it why, but the reason behind it, or a what as a result or a thing and whatnot. So let's pretend we do not know the word vanguard, okay? And let me ask you, what makes more sense? Doping doctors can be seen as the likely future development of an army of medical practitioners who are leaving, who are leaving the traditional medical practice of medicine for the cash-only business of male hormone replacement therapy. Or doping doctors can be seen as the unexpected consequence of an army of medical practitioners who are leaving. So my question really comes down to, is this actually like an unexpected result? Well, from what we're reading here, no, they're actually actively leaving this. Like they are actually moving out of that. So based on just process of elimination, assuming I don't know that word, a likely future development best fits what we're looking for based on the grammar and the meaning behind it. So basically it's saying doping doctors can be seen as the future or the leading part or likely future development of an army. Now, of course, this is made much simpler if you actually know what vanguard means. And to define it in terms, I wrote down just for you a few words, usually like large numbers of like an advanced party of soldiers leading an attack. So at the forefront, basically comparing these doctors to the leading soldiers in an army, like carving or paving the way for everyone else. Now, you can answer this question without that knowledge, of course, but certainly if you know that, it makes sense in the context. And that's the trouble with these ones. It's a bit of luck. If you know the word, you're going to find it a lot easier than others. Good. And what we'll see in our future videos, we'll see other lexical reference questions. Some are more phrases, some are more vocabulary, some are more those cohesive devices. Okay, if you made it this far, Well done. That's a lot of thinking and brain power. To summarize, we have some strategies that we're seeing again and again, and one of them is with your 4 options, there's usually words in each option that can make it easier to rule out or eliminate. So that's why reading your questions and options carefully is so important. Sometimes, as we see, sometimes it's a specific phrase that you're looking at and seeing if it matches. Other times it's whole examples, multiple examples that you're piecing together. I find this is what can make Part C challenging. When you are given a question, you don't always know which kind of question is it. Am I looking throughout the whole paragraph, or am I looking at a specific couple of sentences and so forth? So if you're still struggling, good news is I have more videos coming. In our next video, we're going to look at a different texts for Part C, new topic, but same strategies to apply it. Now, for those of you that would like some hands-on practice with me, I have this upcoming 2-hour OET Reading Masterclass on Monday, March the 10th from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. I encourage you to join me. We are going to cover strategies, hands-on practice. We'll have lots of time for questions because that can really help with those clarifications. So make sure to register now. The link is down below in that description box, and there is limited availability. So make sure you sign up before it fills up and whatnot. If you haven't already, subscribe to my channel because there are new videos coming out in terms of this section of the OET.